Assalamualaikum. Hi, this is me, Nur Shafina binti Shafri. So here I will talk about what is ILPA, the scope word of ILPA, then the history of how this law was created. Okay, first let me see what is ILPA. ILPA stands for Illegal Logging Prohibited Act. It was about the act to aim to reduce the harmful environment, social and economic impact of illegal logging. This legislation supports Australian commitment to promote the worldwide trade of legally harvested timber, which are linked with the European Union and the US, who have also taken action to prevent the trade of illegally harvested timber. The Australian Illegally Logging Prohibited Act 2012 is designed to promote the trade in legally harvested timber and timber products in Australia. The law consists of the Illegal Logging Prohibited Act 2012 and the Illegal Logging Prohibited Regulation 2012. Okay, now let's move to the scope word of ILPA. The scope word of ILPA that is to control the price market of bird timber. It prohibits the importing of legally logged wood and the processing of illegally logged raw logs. For the purpose of the Act, it authorized inspectors to exercise monitoring, investigation and enforcement authorities. And lastly, to importers of regulated wood goods must take declaration to the custom minister concerning their due diligence at time of importation. Then now let's hear some history of ILPA. Australian Illegal Logging Prohibition Act AILPA 2012 was designed to promote the trade legally harvested timber and timber products in Australia. The Act commenced on 28 November 2012 and outlines Australia's framework for illegal logging. The Act made it criminal offences to intentionally, deliberately or carelessly importing wood, pulp and paper products into Australia, or processing illegal logged Australian raw logs. It further specified that some regulated process need due diligence on the part of firm. The regulation commenced on 13 November 2014 and described it outlined the due diligence produced the firm must follow. Due diligence is required of importer of regulated timber product and Australia processor of raw log to reduce the possibility of illegal logging of raw log, wood and wood fiber. The Act received royal assent on 28 November 2012 and it provides for criminal offences for importing illegally logged timber, importing illegally logged timber, unregulated timber product and the domestic processing of Australian raw illegally logged raw log.
Laws stated in ILPA. In Australia Illegal Logging Prohibition Act 2012, ILPA, there is a few laws that are stated in this act. It is relating with the law of timber harvesting, timber processing, export of timber and timber products, import of timber and timber products, and trade in listed timber species. Firstly, for the law of the timber harvesting, the laws that are related to timber harvesting are National Forestry Act 1984, P13, Forest Rule of the respective states, and the Law of Environmental Quality Act 1972, Act 127, Section 34A, Environment Quality, Prescribed Activities, Environmental Impact Assessment, or the 1987, Item 1 of Schedule. Starting with National Forest Policy of 1977, updated in 1992, the Permanent Forest Estate PRE is managed, planned, protected and developed by Malaysia's several forestry departments in accordance with the National Forestry Policy (NFP) and the National Forestry Act (NFA). The policy's main goal is to define the permanent forest estate, which is strategically located throughout the country and is managed in a reasonable and sustainable manner, production forests, protection forests, amenity forests, and research and education forests will all be managed and categorized under the PFE. The NFP requires that states use production forests within the PFE in a sustainable manner to secure forest products for both domestic and international use in perpetuity sustainably. Furthermore, the PFE, including productive forest area, will be managed in accordance with sustainable management principle to developing and developed economic and environmental advantage for the nations and its people. The NFP demands a clear forest use plan for forest development, which should include forest regenerations and restorations operations. To accomplish this, the NFP also requires states forestry bodies to promote efficient harvesting and utilization within their production forests to maximize economic benefits and stimulate the development of appropriate forest industries that commensurates with resource flow, particularly in the production of a higher value added finished and semi-finished products. Next is Malaysia's National Policy on Biological Diversity 1988 was passed with the goal of conserving Malaysia's biological diversity and ensuring that its components are used in a sustainable manner for the country's sustained progress and socio-economic development. Conventions on Biological Diversity (CBD) was ratified by Malaysia in 1994, and all ratifying countries were expected to incorporate the convention into their national policy. The policy on biological diversity stands the concept of a tropical biological research center and includes strategic for effective biological diversity management. SFM System Sustainable Forest Management, Malaysia is dedicated to sustainable farming practice. As a result, Malaysia uses the area control and or volume forest management methods, which are specified in each state's forest management plans. Based on the net area of production forest inside the permanent reserve forest, annual timber yields are allocated to balance timber productions and extraction. Following that, each state must report on its compliance with the annual extraction limit. The National Land Council, which is chaired by Malaysia's Deputy Prime Minister, oversees the review of these figures in Sarawak and Sabah. Learn more about SFM. There are several laws that are directly or indirectly related to the Forestry Act 1984, including Federal Constitutions, National Land Code 1965, Act 56, Criminal Procedure Code revised 1999, Act 593, Penal Code revised 1997, Act 574, Evidence Act 1950, International Trade in Endangered Species Act 2008, Act 686, Mineral Development Act 1994, Act 525, Wildlife Conservation Act 2010, Act 716, Fisheries Act 1985, Act 317, and Environmental Qualities Act 1974, Act 127. Malaysian states, like the national government, have forestry laws and policies that license must follow to harvest from the PFE. For example, in Sabah, there are several essential legislations that govern forest management and protection. They are intended to be compatible with existing forest ecosystem, scale appropriate and proportional to the intensity of forest management in the area. Example of applicable state forestry laws in Sabah: Forest Enactment 1968, Life Conservation Enactment 1997, Biodiversity Enactment 2000, and Environmental Impact Assessment (EIA) Guidelines for Logging and Forest Clearance Activities 2002. Penalty that's stated in ILPA: when a certain party breaking the law of legal timber, there will be a penalty that need to be paid by them. Penalty stated in Illegal Logging Prohibition Act 2012: intentionally, deliberately, or recklessly trading with illegal log timber can result in a 5-year prison sentence and or a fine up to 500 penalty units, $80,000 Australian dollars for an individual, and 450,000 Australian dollars for a corporation or body corporate. The Act implementations begin with a soft start compliance period in which the department did not impose by any due diligence non-compliance fines. The compliance time for the soft start concluded on December 31st, 2017. Businesses and individuals that fail to comply with due diligence standard as of January 1st, 2018 may face penalties. Illegal logging compliance has more information about the Australian government's compliance process. Fines are imposed at the discretion of the court. Currently, the maximum penalties that can be imposed are for a person 5 years in prison and or 55,000 Australian dollars and or 275,000 Australian dollars for corporations or body corporate. These penalties are known as penalty units under the unlawful logging state. The amount of one penalty unit is now established as 110 Australian dollars under the Crimes Act of 1914.
As we all know, prohibited illegal logging under Regulation 2012. Therefore, all the illegal activity include logging and importing of illegal species of log will be taken into custody. The function of monitoring, investigation, and reinforcement of ILPA is referring to the surveillance of defaultee. Hi and Assalamualaikum. I'm Narashin Shari from AS 117 will be presenting about monitoring, investigation, and reinforcement of ILPA. Procedure of authority when taking someone criminally logging into custody are divided into 5 divisions, which are inspectors, monitoring, investigation, civil penalties, and infringement notice. The first division is inspectors. Inspectors is the one that is appointed by a secretary with having the necessary training or experience to carry out the duty to investigate the illegal logger. All of the procedure or direction given by the secretary must be followed by the inspectors. Next, monitoring. An inspector can use this division to see if the Act's provisions have been observed or being followed. It also allows an inspector to verify the information provided accordance with or appear to be in accordance with the law. Hence, the Act's provision is correct. Inspectors will be monitoring power and warrants. The third one, investigation. This division enables an inspector to collect evidence relating to a violation of the Act. If there are reasonable grounds to believe that there is material on the premises that relates to a violation of this Act, an inspector may enter and he may be needed assistance by other person if necessary.
Thank you.
The investigation will also include power and warrants. Next, civil penalties. After all the 3 procedures which inspect, monitor, and investigate have made, the people who criminally wrong will be given a penalties according to their fault. Example of penalty civil is 100 penalty units. And the last, infringement notices. This notice will be given if the faulty have not settled down their penalties.
Hi, Assalamualaikum. My name is Mazatun Masarabatul Mustafa, 2019255924, and I'm gonna tell you about logging procedure and regulations. So we know that at least 5% of the logged land must be left with undisturbed forests. Technique to enhance spontaneous regeneration of desired timber species should be used in forest management. Forestry needs should be considered in conjunction with the Wildlife Department, and at least half of the area should be designated as wildlife friendly at all times. Next, we have a forest operation plan that concludes sediment will be less likely to wash into riverbeds as a result of this, according to the Forest Engineering Plan, FEP. Next, we have the Forestry Department has published specifications for logging in watershed zones. Loggers must produce a tree harvesting planning, or THP, that specifies the site, machinery, landings, and stream crossing. Forest loss should be limited to less than 40% of the standing volume or around 30 meters, whichever is lower. Last, pre-logging planning. Inventory and tree marking also include in logging procedure and regulation. Road construction and speeding, logging machines, post-logging assessment, and silviculture treatment. So, let's move to illegal forest activities and logging. Illegal logging is the harvesting, processing, transporting, buying, or selling of timber in contravention of national and international laws. Illegal logging has a devastating impact on some of the world's most valuable remaining forests, and on the people who live in them and rely on the resources that forests provide. This is an example of illegal logging. First, logging timber species protected by national law. Second, buying logs from local entrepreneurs that have been harvested outside the concessions. Third, logging outside concession boundaries. Fourth, contracting with forest owner to harvest in their land but then cutting trees from neighboring public lands instead. Lastly, logging in protected areas such as forest reserve. That's all from me. Thank you.